In this video, we're going to explore two important types of poetry, subjective poetry and objective poetry. Let's begin with subjective poetry. Subjective poetry is personal, emotional, and deeply introspective. In this type of poetry, the poet reflects on their own feelings, thoughts, and experiences. It's less about the outside world and more about the inner world of the poet. Think about the word introspective. It means looking inward, thinking deeply about what's happening in your own mind and heart. Subjective poetry is exactly that. It's personal because the poet brings in their own reflections and emotions, often inspired by what they've seen, heard, or lived through. Two major forms of subjective poetry are the lyric and the elegy. A lyric expresses personal feelings in a song-like style, while an elegy is a mournful reflection, often written about loss or death. One of the earliest examples of subjective poetry comes from the Greek poet Sappho. In her famous fragment 31, she captures the intensity of her emotions: love, jealousy, and admiration, all in just a few lines. This shows us how powerful and timeless subjective poetry can be. Now let's turn to objective poetry. Objective poetry is very different. It presents eternal facts, events, or stories in a detached and impersonal manner. The poet stays in the background, not bringing in personal emotions or reflections. When we say detached, we mean separate. The poet is like an observer describing what they have seen or heard but without adding their own feelings. The focus is always outward: a heroic act, a thrilling battle, a beautiful scene, or an important event. Examples of objective poetry include epic, drama, and ballad. One of the earliest and greatest examples comes from Homer, the ancient Greek poet. His epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, tell grand stories of war, adventure, and heroism, all narrated in an impersonal and timeless way. Sappho was a female ancient Greek poet who wrote lyrical poetry, famous for its intense passion and description of love. She was born on the Isle of Lesbos around 620 BC, and died approximately 50 years later. Sappho's poetry is a landmark in the shift from epic to lyric. 1. Personal emotions. Her poems focus on love, longing, desire, jealousy, and heartache. 2. First-person voice. She uses I frequently, making her own voice central to her poetry. This created a deeply personal and confessional tone that was rare in Greek literature of her time. 3. Focus on women and relationships. Her poems often center around female communities, emotional bonds, and sensual attraction between women. These themes highlight a subjective inner world rarely preserved in male-dominated classical texts. One famous example is Fragment 31, Ode to the Beloved. In this poem, she describes the jealousy and physical symptoms she feels while watching someone else speak with the woman she loves. She doesn't describe the woman objectively, but instead focuses on her own experience of emotional turmoil. Sappho's work laid the foundation for later poets: Roman love poets like Catullus and Propertius, romantic poets like Keats and Shelley, and even modern confessional poets like Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton. She was also known as the 10th Muse. Homer. Homer is known as the blind poet of ancient Greece. 1. Impersonal narration. Homer does not speak as I or insert his own feelings. His narrative voice is omniscient. He tells us what happens, what people feel, even what the gods are doing, but never what he himself thinks or feels. 2. Epic scale. His poems describe heroic deeds, battles, voyages, and mythical adventures, especially in the Iliad and the Odyssey. The focus is on characters like Achilles, Hector, and Odysseus, not on the poet himself. 3. Moral and cultural reflection. Homer explores universal themes: honor, pride, fate, loyalty, and heroism. But he does this through story, not through self-reflection. 4. Dramatic objectivity. He uses extended similes, dialogue, and rich descriptive detail to show the world as it is, not filtered through his own emotions or opinions. Examples of objective poetry: the Iliad and the Odyssey. Homer's great epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, tell the story of the Trojan War that followed the abduction of Helen of Troy, and the wandering of Odysseus after the war. These works were performed every 4 years at the famous Panathenaic festivals in ancient Athens, and today they are considered among the world's oldest literary treasures. In the Iliad, Book 1, line 127, Homer does not insert any personal judgment on Achilles' anger. He simply presents it as a fact that led to destruction. He states the consequences of Achilles' wrath, death, and suffering without emotional commentary. The events are told in a third-person, detached style, focusing on what happened, not how the narrator feels about it. This is the hallmark of Homeric style.